Good day, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Executive Insights by Shipping and Freight Resource. My name is Harish Manadia, the founder of Shipping and Freight Resource, as you already know. I have the pleasure today of welcoming Bethann Rooney. She is the Port Director for the Port Department of Port of New York and New Jersey. Currently, the number one port in USA in terms of containerized volumes. Welcome, Bethann.
Good day. Thank you for having me.
Right. So we have seen the Port of New York making waves recently with its performance, especially in terms of the shift in volumes from West Coast to East Coast. So what are some of the main reasons for this shift in cargo volumes, and do you think it is sustainable?
Yeah, so I mean that is ultimately the question. I think that is ahead of everybody, and it's not really just about New York, New Jersey, but there's been a lot of cargo moved from the West Coast to several East and U.S. Gulf Coast ports, and I think that comes from a lot of uncertainty and I think fear over the conditions on the West Coast. And while right now they do not have any congestion to speak of, we certainly all know what they were experiencing this time last year, but they're also dealing with unresolved labor issues and a contract that has expired. And I think some of the shippers are reluctant to return to using the West Coast ports to the level that they were doing prior to the pandemic until those labor issues are resolved. There has also been some concern shared with us about the environmental programs that some of the California ports have in place that limit the availability of truck power, and also some state laws that are limiting the availability of truck power. So, and perhaps costing more money because there is a limited supply of truck power now. So, what folks are interested in New York and New Jersey for is the reliability that we can offer, both in terms of having a labor contract that goes through September of 2024, and notably is already in negotiations for extension or renewal. And that's something that's very important to our labor workforce, to provide the shipping community with assurances that we will be able to continue to move their cargo and labor will not become an impediment. And then similarly, we have well over 3,000 trucking companies that are doing business in the Port of New York and New Jersey. And just last year alone, in 2022, while the availability of truck power was limited elsewhere in the country, we actually had over 2,000 additional new trucks and truck drivers operating in the Port of New York and New Jersey. So we do not have a shortage of truck power.
That's good to hear. And in terms of tariffs, is there a big difference between the East Coast ports and West Coast ports? What sort of difference would that be? Just off the top of your head.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty close. Obviously, the ocean freight rates are very different between the West and the East Coasts, but the tariff rates when it comes to the terminals and any of the port tariffs, they're pretty similar. Okay. There's not stark differences between those.
Cool. So as per the statistics that all the ports have been putting out, it appears that the Port of New York and New Jersey has narrowed the full container volume between West Coast and, well, notably LA, Long Beach, and New York by about 91% in the last 17 years, which is quite an achievement. So was there a strategy behind this achievement? Was it planned, or it happened due to circumstances? But 91% over 17 years is quite a big gap.
Yeah. Well, it's what's important, I think, is that we are returning to the status that we had as the number one port in the country for many, many years prior to Los Angeles taking that over. Important to note that while we were the number one port in September, October, and November, LA did in fact move more containers than us for the month of December. And for the full year of 2022, LA moved more volume than we did on the full year.
Yes.
But New York, New Jersey moved more than Long Beach on the full year. So we did take over the number 2 position in the United States for the full year. And I would say, that is a combination of a plan where the Port Authority and our terminal operators have been investing heavily in our infrastructure and the supporting systems to service the cargo and to meet the demand for over a decade, as well as it happens, right? The shippers who need to get their cargo to market, and we're experiencing challenges in doing so in a timely manner on the West Coast. When they shifted that cargo to New York, New Jersey, it was important to us that we provide a level of reliable service so that they could continue to move that cargo through New York, New Jersey. So we have not seen, while there is a softening of the volume, and that is being experienced everywhere in the United States right now, that softening is on par with softening elsewhere, but we are not seeing yet a return of that cargo to the West Coast. And it is our goal to hang on to that cargo.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned about reliability of the port, but how did you manage to handle all these additional volumes without the expected breakdown? I'm sure people would have thought, okay, is New York or New Jersey going to be able to handle these volumes? Because I don't think you certainly budgeted for this or anticipated this volumes.
Well, and that is exactly right. So in June or July of 2019, we published our Port Master Plan that would take us through the year 2050. And in that Port Master Plan, we forecasted that our planning volume would be 9.5 million TEUs in the 2029-2030 timeframe. And we did that volume last year. So we got thrust into the future with that extraordinary growth in cargo that was 28% over the pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah.
We had the capacity in our terminals, meaning in the yards, at the berths, at the gates, within the harbor. Where we did run into some problems, however, was being able to get that cargo out of the port and into the warehouses and distribution centers. So there were challenges, and there were challenges with the truck capacity, with the chassis capacity, with rail capacity, and quite frankly, with warehousing capacity. So we had beneficial cargo owners that had brought far more cargo into the United States than they had the capability of absorbing. So we did have quite a bit of cargo that was being stored in containers, either at our terminals or at the warehouses and distribution centers. But the plan that we had and the investment that we made to already have the capacity on the terminals for that 2029-2030 volume was the difference that we had that allowed us to handle the volumes without over 100 ships at anchor for weeks at a time.
Okay, that's nice to hear, because I mean you've explained some of the similar problems that the West Coast was also facing, warehousing, distribution, rail delays, truck issues. But it's good to see that New York has been able to handle that much better than the West Coast. Now, President Biden signed the OSRA 2022, the Ocean Shipping Reform Act. Do you see the U.S. ports in general, and of course New York and New Jersey, to be able to benefit from it? Is there anything that strikes you?
Yeah. So the Ocean Shipping Reform Act, and shipping laws in the United States have really not changed since the 80s. So about 40, years since there has been, major updates within the shipping regulations. But the regulations and what OSRA has changed will really impact the shipper, the customer, the beneficial cargo owner, or the consignee. No direct benefits will be gained for the terminal operators or for the port authorities, but there are protections that are put into place now in U.S. law that are for the benefit of the shipper. So certainly when it comes to meeting the demands of the consumer in the United States, those protections would extend, through the ports and the terminals that will ultimately benefit with the cargo that moves through us. But there's nothing specific.
Nothing direct.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So, but of course, if the call for a national shipping line for USA's is accepted and heeded and comes out strong, I'm sure that will benefit the port somewhere.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting concept, and certainly, so my training, my background, is as a merchant mariner, as a U.S. merchant mariner. So I certainly support fully the U.S. flag fleet. And I think if there were to be a U.S. national shipping line, I think it would certainly help with exports from the United States, where targeted exports that were challenged in getting on, some of the foreign flag vessels. I certainly think it would help from there. That being said, the Port of New York and New Jersey alone is not a large export port.
Sure.
And that's predominantly because we are the first port of call 76% of the time on all of the strings that come to the U.S. East Coast. And then the ships are making another 1 or 2 stops at least before they head foreign again. So for an exporter to put your cargo on a ship in New York, New Jersey, it makes more sense to take advantage of the time and put it on the ship, later on down the road.
What would be the alternate port then for those shippers around that area?
So some of the services are calling, Baltimore, Maryland, Norfolk, Virginia, Charleston, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia. There's several options on the U.S. East Coast after the Port of New York and New Jersey.
Yeah, obviously, I think U.S. is, like many countries, is also focusing a lot on the importers and import cargoes than exports as well. But that's a discussion for another day, I suppose, because a lot of export stories have come out as well, both on the East Coast and West Coast.
What I think is interesting is, even if we had a U.S. national shipping line, that's just one node in the supply chain. And we still will need to be able to have the capacity in the rest of the supply chain. So being able to get the goods to port on a vessel is one part of the equation. we will then need to still move the cargo from its origin to the port or from the port to its final destination. And unfortunately, a national shipping line, unless it becomes a 4PL, a 3PL, or a 4PL, that's offering trucking services and warehousing services, we'd still be dependent upon private sector to do all those.
Sure. So now that you have gotten to the top, what are some of your plans to stay there? Because obviously there's also talk about the container volumes, as you mentioned earlier, as well, is coming down. The rates are coming down, and the labor negotiations is the only sort of gray area because of which customers are shifting. But are there some plans to maintain your position?
Yeah, so we need to continue doing what we've been doing, and one of the things that we do here that is, I think, unique is the amount of collaboration and communication and coordination that we do. So we have a Council on Port Performance that has been in existence now for about 9 years, and that has all of the sectors of the supply chain that are working together for the good of the entire gateway. So we have 6 terminal operators who are fierce competitors, but when it comes to working to attract and retain the cargo, they are working hand in hand with each other on common initiatives. So we'll continue to do that. We've made great progress in making sure that everybody understands that if one aspect of the supply chain doesn't work optimally, it affects everybody else, and we all have to be working well together. There's continued investment that is planned, both by the Port Authority in some of our roadway network, our rail network, further work on our harbor and our channels and berths and wharf infrastructure. Our terminal operators continue to invest in new cargo handling equipment, new yard optimization, gate optimization, type softwares. But the big change that we all need to make is to begin to develop a framework for how we will migrate and transition over time to a 24/7 operation. And that's not a 24/7 operation in the next 2 or 3 years.
Is it still not viable?
It's not viable because there's not enough truck drivers, there's not enough trains, there's not enough chassis, the warehouses and distribution centers are not open more than a single shift. But we need to develop the framework for how do we get there, and everybody needs to agree to it, and we need to develop a plan, for when we will get there, and we will get there incrementally. I can't tell you today, what the first step in that plan will be, but we need to develop that plan and have everybody agreeing to it.
Your labor body on the East Coast is ILA, am I right?
Correct.
So is there, you already mentioned that there was some negotiations already going on and started. So is there any contingency measures from your side just to, just in case? Because the West Coast also, they said, yeah, everything is going to be fine. Biden stepped in. There was a lot of back and forth, but nothing has happened so far.
One thing I am confident about is our workforce. The ILA and is an extremely patriotic group of men and women who are committed to moving cargo and getting the job done. I've been in this business for 35 years in the Port of New York and New Jersey. And, we've had several contracts, come to terms, during that time frame. And we haven't had any labor disruptions. Again, it's a very patriotic group.
Is that also every 4 years?
It's either 4 or 6 years, generally. Okay. But I mean, these men and women work through, the attacks on the World Trade Center and, hurricanes and, all sorts of pandemics, right? I mean, they
Yeah,
never
yeah,
missed a beat.
yeah.
They never missed a beat. So
Yeah, I
I'm
read about
confident.
that. Yes.
Yeah. I'm confident that they will continue to move cargo and get the job done.
Yeah, that's great, and um, hopefully a lot of the other American ports can also learn some of the principles and some of the guidance mechanisms from Port of New York and New Jersey. But Bethann, thank you very much for your time today on Shipping and Freight Resource. It's been wonderful having you, and wish you all the best.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate, the opportunity and appreciate the conversation. It's an exciting time in our industry.
Yeah, it definitely is. Definitely is. Yeah, we'll be in touch. Thank you.